So in this video, I want to talk about the 40-hour work week. Now, before you grab your pitchforks and say how these millennials don't want to work and they're all lazy and this and that, hear me out first. I talked about the 40-hour work week in multiple videos, and I think personally that it's outdated. I think it's outdated because it's no longer 40 hours anymore. Studies have shown that people are working closer to 40 to 50 hours, and during the pandemic, it's shown that people that are working from home have been working up to an additional 3 hours a day for a total of 11 hours. Because it's easy to lose track of time because you think you're at home, it's just one email, then one email turns into 3 or 4, and then all of a sudden you're working on other stuff and you're gonna go work for 10 minutes on your presentation that you have to give to all the executives of the company, and then all of a sudden you realize that the food you left on the stove is burning because you got caught up in your work. But where did the 40-hour work week originate from? From my research, which will be linked down below, the 40-hour work week originated from the 19th century after the Industrial Revolution, where activists and labor union groups wanted better working conditions, and in addition to that, people were working 80 to 100-hour work weeks at this time. In 1866, the National Labor Union asked Congress to pass a law mandating 8-hour workdays. It wasn't passed, but it got more publicity. 3 years later, President Ulysses Grant guaranteed 8-hour workdays for government employees, and he encouraged private sector employees to push for the same rights. I'm not sure why he just couldn't do something more instead of encouraging people to push for it, but whatever, we'll roll with it, I guess. In 1866, the Illinois legislature passed a law that mandated 8-hour workdays, and many employers refused to cooperate, and a ton of people went on strike. Allegedly, there was a bomb that also went off on that day, and now it's a public holiday that's commemorated on May 1st. It's known as the Haymarket Riot. It wasn't until 1926 that Henry Ford popularized the 40-hour work week after he discovered that working more only netted them a small increase in productivity that lasted a short time. 12 years later, in 1938, Congress passed the Fair Labor Standards Act, which required employers to pay people overtime if they worked over 44 hours. 2 years later, they amended the act to 40 hours. It wasn't until 1940 that the 40-hour work week became US law. I tried doing some research into how it was in Canada, and allegedly we had it worse. The 40-hour work week wasn't a reality until the 1960s. Side note, if I was a worker before this whole 40-hour work week thing, I would feel so cheated out of my time. It's actually unreal, because say you worked from the time you're 18 until you were 70, and you turned 70 after they passed the law in 1940, and you lost all that time. I would be so heated. But then again, it's like you crawled so the next generation could walk, in a sense, right? You paved the way, I guess you could say. But there were thousands, maybe even millions of people that just, their names just got lost to history or forgotten, even though they killed themselves at work for all those years. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud here, but I think if it was me, I would be pretty pissed off. I remember seeing this quote from a long time ago, and I can't remember who said it or who popularized it, but essentially it says something like 8 hours for work, 8 hours for leisure, and 8 hours for rest. But you see, back in the 40s and 50s, you could survive on one income for all your expenses. The men usually went to work to serve their 40 hours, but they had wives at home to take care of the kids and clean and do groceries and stuff like that. So then you had your 24 hours split in 3 equal ways, right? You still have to commute to work and stuff like that, but roll with it. Now we have 2 parents that both have to work, and even then they're still barely making it. Then after they're both done work, they have to go and pick up their kids and make dinner, and maybe their son has soccer or something like that. So you can see how people are losing more and more of their time. If people could survive on one income, still, it would be way easier, because then one person takes care of the house and things like cooking and groceries and kids. And then the other one is the one that goes out and works, or is the breadwinner, I guess you could say. It's just that when both people have to work, it complicates things way more, because then you have to take your kids to a babysitter and you have to go pick them up, and maybe they don't live close by, and it's just a whole nother mess. But are 40-hour work weeks effective? According to this survey, which will be linked down below, people spend 45% of their time with primary job duties, 40% in meetings, administrative tasks, and interruption, and 14% of their time with email. Those numbers show that people are far from reaching their 100% productivity, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. One thing that's for certain is, working more than 8 hours a day is detrimental for both employees and employers. There have been many studies that show, those who work over 40 hours a week or even more than 8 hours a day are less healthy, they're more likely to make mistakes, and are less productive even though they're working more hours. People are more likely to get sick, people are more likely to get injured on the job and stuff like that. And this is coming from the CDC, not some random person that made this up in his bedroom talking to a camera. It's been shown that countries with the highest number of working hours are the least productive. In Luxembourg, which is the most productive country in the world allegedly, the citizens had an average work week of just 29 hours. But they're the most productive country in the world. The data is there. People are just not choosing to accept it. People are stuck in their old ways. The 40-hour work week worked 100 years ago. It doesn't work now. People are overworked and they're underpaid, and they spend more time at work than they do with their own damn kids, for God's sake. Why are we not progressing as a society with this? Everyone said studies show that the COVID-19 vaccine is effective against COVID-19, and that was created this year? So it took us under a year to all agree that the vaccine is effective, and people ran out to get their shot in their arm. But studies come out from 2004 from the CDC that say, hey, maybe 40 hours is too much. And people just discount it. They don't believe it or whatever it is. Countries are doing it and it's working. During the first 2 months of 1974, the UK limited the work week to 3 days to save energy, and production only dropped 6%. 6% over 2 extra days, not hours, days. From 2000 to 2008, the French government limited the maximum working hours to 35. They gave French employees a survey, and they said they were happier working reduced hours and were able to achieve a better balance between work and life. From 2015 to 2017, a Swedish nursing home conducted a 2-year experiment where nurses went from working 8-hour days to working 6-hour days with the same pay. Sick leave dropped by 10%, and nurses who participated in it said that they were healthier, more energetic, and more alert. So, you know what? Let me just chill. Let me just give a solution. So what do we do then? Well, I think we have 3 options here. 1, we have a compressed work week. We have 4 10-hour days. The pros to that are 3-day weekends. Everyone loves 3-day weekends, like Labor Day and Thanksgiving and stuff like that, right? Employees still serve their 40 hours, but they get 1 more day to themselves. Another upside is that there will hopefully be reduced emissions and killing of the earth, because employees won't be going to work for that 5th day in the week. That does still mean that, they might go to the beach or to the cottage, which possibly means driving further and further killing the earth. But I'm not sure how that'll pan out. The downside to this option is that 10-hour days are long as hell. 2 extra hours is a lot, and the quality of your work might be reduced because of those 2 extra hours, as I stated before. I think it might lead to people dragging their feet a lot more. When you look at the clock and you see that it's 4 o'clock, you get amped. But I think if people look at the clock and they see that they have 2 hours left, it won't be motivating at all. It also leaves very little time, and you could have difficulty scheduling things outside of work, like cooking and picking up your kids and grocery shopping and things like that. I think the next option is to let people work 4 days, a 32-hour work week. The pros to this, I think, heavily outweigh the cons. It has the benefit of a 3-day weekend without the extra 2 hours on working days. It'll definitely boost work-life balance and happiness levels for employees, because isn't that what you want? If I'm an employer, I want the people that work with me to be happy, because then they'll be more, I hate to say invested, but they won't have as much of a problem doing something, I hate to say extra, but like, you get what I'm saying? When you feel appreciated, you're more likely to do something for somebody. It's, basically what I'm trying to say. I think it'll increase productivity because then everybody knows that they have a 3-day weekend every week. It'll give them that extra incentive to get their work done faster and more efficiently. Some cons to it though might be, people might not have enough time to finish their work. Some people's job takes up the whole 40 hours and, sometimes even longer. So those people might not get a chance to finish their work. It could also be challenging for customer-focused industries like sales and real estate and things like that. It may impact stores and their profits because 32-hour weeks aren't the norm yet. Like, I'll tell you right now, as a consumer, if I know of 2 grocery stores and I have to go get groceries, I'm more likely gonna go to the one that's open rather than the one that's cheaper, if that makes sense. Because say you work also and you have 1 day out of your week to get groceries, that means you can only go to the one that's open, and the one that's closed will never get you as a customer. Because if one of them is closed on Friday and Friday is your only day off, then you're never going to the one that's closed. You see what I'm saying? I think the solution to that will be that the store could be open for 7 days, but then you divide up the employees, that would rather have the first half of the week off versus the second half. Either way, both groups of employees will work 1 day on the weekend, so there's no unfairness there. And the store's open from 10 to 7, right? So there you go, problem solved. I think the only other hitch would be wages, right? Companies wouldn't want to pay people the same pay for them to work less. So that's where the only problem is, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how to solve that. I've spent a couple hours solving these other problems. I don't know how to solve the wage problem. I'm not expecting companies to pay people the same because, let's be honest, most of them probably won't. There will be some nice ones, there will be some outliers, but the majority of them probably won't. I'm also not gonna rely on the government to give people pay for that 5th day because it might cut into our military spending, which we desperately need apparently. I think the final solution I could see is that we let people work 5 days, but we make the 5th day a half day. Then people are working 36 hours a week, they get some of their wages back, and they're only missing half a day of pay. Obviously, we're talking about hourly workers here. They also get a whole, half of their day back to possibly take care of things like groceries or laundry or whatever they want. At the end of the day, like I always say, what do I know? I'm only trying to give people more work-life balance because honestly, it's pretty messed up that people spend more time at work with their colleagues than at home with their kids. 100 years ago, we had 80-hour work weeks. 60 years ago, it went to 40. And for the record, I'm not saying we don't want to work. We understand that things have to get done to forward society and advance a greater cause, but I don't think it should be at the expense of people spending their already limited time away from their kids for a majority of their time. And as always, thanks for watching.